Hey folks, so over the past couple of days I've noticed more and more reports of incidents of gun violence, from the triple murder at the gun range here in Georgia to the two mass shootings in South Carolina and others that I'm not even going to get into right now. Whether or not they're considered mass shootings or outright murders, the issue is there's been an increase in violent crime, and violence in general. Now some might say that there's more reporting going on since Biden's announced his gun control agenda, I should say. And that may or may not be true. Maybe it's just the incidents haven't gone up so much as they're reporting more of it to try to put more pressure on pushing the gun control agenda. But I would say over the past 2 or 3 years, particularly over the past 2 since the pandemic began, that we've seen an overall increase in violence, and violence across the nation in general. Whether it's assaults, robberies, murders, civil unrest, mass shootings, in general there's been an increase in violence. So I think it's important that we stop and take a moment to understand what's going on and what we need to do about it. Obviously, we can't control what other people do. All we can do is control ourselves, our reactions, and our being ready to deal with those actions, those incidents when they occur. It's easy to say that, oh, you need to be ready, you need to watch out for this stuff, you need to be alert and do this and that and the other. But when it comes down to it, it takes a little bit of effort. It's not as easy as it might sound, and a lot of that is due to normalcy bias. And for those that don't know, normalcy bias is just simply we become biased to what we experience on a daily basis. I kind of touched on this in one of my earlier videos about what I mean when I say it's going to get bad. And simply put, what you experience, people are creatures of habit. What you experience on a daily basis, you tend to get accustomed to those experiences, that being the norm, and you tend to not consider things that happen outside of that norm. And in fact, you tend to think that something like a mass shooting or an assault or robbery or mugging or whatever might not happen to you because that stuff just never happens. That is normalcy bias, and that will get you killed. You need to be aware that it doesn't matter if this stuff has never happened to you before. It doesn't matter if you don't believe that it can happen to you or to anybody in your community or your neighborhood or your city. The fact of the matter is that incidents of this type of violence, there's no rhyme or reason to it for the most part. Yeah, there's motives to each individual case, but you can't predict when these things are going to happen. These things always seem to happen randomly. They'll always catch you off guard. But the thing that you need to understand is, over the past few years, again, the past 2 years in particular, there's been a steady increase in violence and violent crimes. People seem to be more ready and willing to use violence for whatever reason. It's our jobs to make sure that we don't succumb to normalcy bias and just become complacent and not pay attention to what's going on around us. Just because there hasn't been a robbery or a murder or whatever in your neighborhood in a given amount of time doesn't mean it can't happen. These things can always happen. In fact, I would say that the longer you've gone in without that happening, the more likely it is to happen in the near future. The odds of it happening are increasing. So we need to make a conscious effort to pay attention to what's going on around us, to be aware of the trends of the activity that's happening around us, and to understand that we're not immune to these incidents affecting us. Maybe you've been fortunate and you've never had one of these events happen in your neighborhood or your community or even to you in general. But you can't assume that it never will. You have to assume, you have to go on the basis of this can happen at any moment and I need to stay alert. Now, understand that maintaining a certain level of alertness is draining. But you need to start developing some situational awareness. Start making a note of people that you see in your neighborhood that you're not familiar with. Start noting things that happen around you that don't normally happen or that you don't notice happening on a normal basis. Start paying attention to all these little things. You know, you see a person over here that you've never seen before. I'm not suggesting go confront them or do anything like that. And I'm not suggesting you judge anybody based on the way they look. But if there's somebody in your neighborhood that you've never seen before, just make a mental note of it. Okay, I've never seen that person. They're in this neighborhood at this time of the day. Just make a note of it in your head. You don't even have to write it down. Just make a note up here. If it helps you to write it down in a notebook, that's fine. But you're not an official neighborhood watch or neighborhood police or whatever. Don't try to be, because that can lead you into a whole nother mess of worms that you don't necessarily want to get involved in. But doing this, and I'm not suggesting do these things to profile people or whatever, but doing this, making notes of these, mental notes of these instances, will help you develop your own situational awareness. Let's say a car drives by your house real slow. It's probably nothing, and maybe it is. Maybe it's nothing, maybe it's something serious, you never know. But make a note of it. Make a note of what kind of car it is, what color it is, what type of car it is. Make a mental note of the license plate. Is it a tag from your state, or is it an out-of-state tag? This is an exercise that will help build the unconscious habit of paying attention to these things. If you start doing this now, even on things that are insignificant or that mean nothing in the end, you're developing the unconscious habit of paying attention to things that stand out. And it's that habit that can potentially save your life or the life of someone you care about. When you're driving to or from your job, or to or from the grocery store, or to a neighbor's house, or to a friend's house, or a relative's house, wherever, anytime you're going somewhere, try to pick out something along that route that you've never really paid attention to before. Make a note of it. If something has changed, make a note of it. Again, this is not to profile people or try to judge anybody. You're building that mental habit of paying attention to things that change. The more you notice these different things, the more likely you are to notice when something unusual or outside the normal day-to-day activities, those things will stand out to you more. If somebody walks through your neighborhood and there's something out of place about them that you can't put your finger on, that will actually grab your attention then. If there's a car driving around in a suspicious manner, that will actually grab your attention quicker if you've developed these habits. One habit that I have that I would encourage you to develop: when you go to some place, always look around you. I'm guilty of doing that almost to an excessive amount. If I'm in a new area, or if I'm in a restaurant with somebody, I'm always looking around. That can be unnerving to some people. That can be aggravating to some people. But I've just gotten in the habit of I'm watching everybody, especially when somebody comes in the door of a restaurant I'm in. I like to position myself to where I can see the exits, where I'm watching the door. I don't like to have my back to the door. If I go to a new restaurant, I notice where the door is that I came in, and I try to notice where any rear exit is, where the kitchen is, where the restrooms are, or whatever. I make note of all of this stuff. It's a habit I've started developing years and years ago, and I continually do it, sometimes even without even realizing it. Because I know that violence tends to seem completely random, and it always happens when you least expect it. And by developing these habits, I'm more prepared to respond in a way that will leave me coming out of the situation unharmed, or at least alive. These are habits that you need to start developing. You need to start being aware of what's going on around you. Don't be paranoid. There's no need to be paranoid. There's no need to live in fear. But you need to develop the habits of understanding and observing what's going on around you. And that way you will notice anything that's out of place. And I can't stress enough how much that can save your life, or the life of someone with you. It will shorten your reaction time when something does happen, or if something does happen. It's not to say something will. You never know. But you have to be ready. When possible, specifically if you carry a firearm on a daily basis, you need to run through scenarios in your head. Okay, let's think of an imaginary scenario. Someone comes in that door waving a gun. Where are you going to take cover? Where are the exits? How are you going to respond that doesn't get you killed or anyone around you killed? You need to war game these scenarios in your head whenever possible. It will help develop your alertness, your situational awareness, and you'll be more prepared to deal with things when and if they happen. That's all I wanted to talk to you about today. It's not a long video, I know, but these things seem to be happening with more regularity, despite the randomness of the situations. You never know where they're going to happen, but they're happening more often. Whether it's two guys shooting it out in a mall, or one person hell-bent on killing as many people as possible, or whether it's somebody that's just not mentally stable trying to commit suicide and working up to it through a mass shooting. You know, there's any number of reasons why something like this happens. There's any number of scenarios, ways things like this can go. And you need to train yourself to be observant, make note of things that are out of place, and if you have a feeling that you don't need to be there, that you need to leave a certain area, pay attention to that feeling. Don't ignore it. If you feel something's not right about a situation and you don't need to be there, leave. I can't stress that enough. If you feel something is wrong, then there's something wrong. Might not be anything major, it might be insignificant, but what does it hurt for you to actually get out of there? Pay attention to your instinct and leave. Nothing. It doesn't cost you anything, and it could mean the difference between life and death. So develop these habits of observation. Pay attention to what's going on around you. Notice when things stand out, when things are out of place. Train yourself to think of what you would do if this happened or if that happened. Your response times will increase. You'll get quicker. You'll get quicker in your response times. Your awareness will sharpen, and you'll be able to handle the situation much quicker, much more efficiently, and much more calmly than someone who hasn't done all of these mental exercises. So that's the lesson for today. That's the video for today. Situational awareness, observation, and reacting to situations. You need to think about these things. You need to war game them. You need to train yourself. If you carry a firearm, don't just go to a range and stand there shooting at targets. I don't care if you have to get you a little airsoft pistol and put that in a holster, but put yourself in a situation where, like if you're in your car, someone's coming at you, pull it and use the gun. Airsoft is not the perfect ideal training aid, but there's a lot that you can do with an airsoft to help you prepare. You can train in ways using an airsoft pistol or an airsoft rifle in places where you can't use a real rifle or pistol. If you don't have access to a range that will let you move from cover to cover firing at targets, airsoft or paintball even will give you that capability. It's not the same as training with a live fire gun, but it adds a new dimension to your training aside from just going to a range and standing stationary facing a target head on. So I would strongly suggest you go through these exercises, you go through these mental exercises, you go through any kind of training. If you own a firearm, get training if possible. If you can't, you need to try to train yourself, but you need to do so in a very safe way. You need to do so being very cognizant of what you are doing and why you are doing it. Speed isn't the issue here when you're training like this. You want to move slow, make every movement slow and deliberate. Get the movements down, get them correctly. Because if you do that and you do it repeatedly, you will develop speed. Speed will come naturally. Again, that's all I've got. That's just the lesson for today's video. Stay aware, be observant, listen to your instincts, and train for the situations where something may happen. That's the best we can do. That's all we can do to be prepared for these random acts of violence that happen all around us and seem to be happening with more and more frequency. You never know where this is going to happen. You can't time it. You can't plan on it. All you can do is prepare yourself to respond in the best way possible. So that's what I would suggest to you guys right now. If you haven't started training, I would strongly suggest you do so. Again, options for that, if you carry a firearm but can't train with moving targets, there's many options. You know, you've got the range. If you can only do stationary target shooting, some ranges will allow you places where you can move from target to target, some don't. But other options are airsoft, paintball. There's also laser target training. If you're not able to find a place where you can shoot at random targets, randomly placed targets, I should say, in a safe manner, laser dry fire targeting, target practice might be an option for you. There's little cartridges that fit in your gun just like a bullet, like a round would. You need to be aware of what you're doing. You need to make sure your gun is unloaded and there are no loaded magazines around you at the time. Follow safety protocols, people. But this allows you to move around even inside a home, shooting at targets that are set up in a safe manner. So look into dry fire training and laser targets, laser cartridges. That might be an option for you. If there's any way possible, get actual training. Not because I think you should have that before you ever get a gun. I mean, obviously, training is important. Knowing how to handle a firearm responsibly and safely is important. There's a lot of people out there, though, that think that, oh, I don't need training. Well, maybe you've been handling firearms most of your life, but that doesn't necessarily mean that in a situation where someone is shooting at you or your life depends on it, that you're going to know how to respond using that firearm. Training is important. Don't disregard it. That's all I've got. I appreciate you guys watching. Like, share, subscribe if you haven't. Stay safe, people. Stay alert. Stay aware of what's going on around you. Keep prepping. Things are going to get rough. I don't know when. I don't know exactly how bad. I just have my gut instincts, my feelings, and what I see going on around me telling me where we're at with things. Do what you got to do to be ready. That's all I can say. I know I keep repeating those same words. I don't like giving you warnings without solutions. But the solutions for most of these problems are always the same. Prep, train, stay alert. For the most part, that's all any of us can do. Anyway, with that, I'll get some more videos out as soon as I can. Until next time, folks, take care, stay safe. I'll catch you later.